The day I read my husband's will, the world I'd built for 50 years crumbled. It truly did. I sat there in that big, quiet room, the one with the heavy curtains. The air felt thick, somehow, like it was pressing down on me. The lawyer, Mr. Davies, cleared his throat. His voice, usually so crisp, sounded distant to me then, like he was speaking from another room or maybe even another world. He began to read, his words rolling out slowly, deliberately. "To my daughter Charlotte," he declared, his voice finally cutting through my daze. "I leave the mansion, the investments, and my entire £7 million estate." A heavy, suffocating silence filled the room after that. It wasn't a peaceful silence, not at all. It was a silence that buzzed with tension, with expectation, with a kind of cold, assessing quiet. I could feel eyes on me, even though I didn't look up. My heart was pounding, a hollow drum in my chest. £7 million. It was more money than I could ever truly imagine. I knew Arthur had done well, but that number, it was dizzying. And then came my part. For me, Eleanor, for all my 72 years, for 50 years of marriage, of dedication, of building a life brick by brick with him, Arthur had left just one line. Mr. Davies read it, his tone softening, almost apologetic. "To my beloved wife, I leave the little shack out back, where we spent our first days, and my eternal love." The words eternal love hung in the air, a cruel, bitter irony. It wasn't the lack of money that stung in that instant. No, it wasn't the £7 million I'd just lost. It was the sound, the sickening, sharp sound of my own daughter's scornful laughter. It pierced me deeper than any knife. It was a short, sharp burst of sound, but it echoed in the silence, filling every corner of that grand room. It was the sound of rejection, of dismissal. The humiliation was swift and sharp, like a shard of broken glass twisting in my gut. Before the lawyer had even finished reading, before I could even process what Arthur had done, Charlotte turned to me. Her eyes were gleaming, not with sadness or respect, but with a raw, ugly greed I'd never seen before. She didn't whisper it. Oh no, she said it loudly, clearly, making sure everyone in the room heard her every word. "Did you hear that, Mum?" she sneered, her voice dripping with triumph. "Your place is out there now, in the chicken coop. You have 1 week to clear your clutter out of my house." My house. The words hit me hard, one after another. This house, the one I had decorated with such care, choosing every fabric, every paint color. The one I had cleaned and kept spotless for decades. The home where I had raised her, the girl who was now casting me out like I was nothing but rubbish. I stood there, frozen, completely paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My mind was reeling. I could feel the pitying glances of the few relatives who were there, and the judging stares too. They looked at me as if I was somehow to blame, as if I deserved this. The emotional coldness in the room was palpable. There I sat in the plush velvet armchair I had chosen myself years ago, imagining all the happy family gatherings. In that moment, the crushing weight of reality settled on me. I understood. I truly understood that my role in that family, the family I'd poured my entire life into, was utterly and completely over. I was the deposed queen, the discarded matriarch. I was just an inconvenient memory, a reminder of a past of struggle that they, especially Charlotte, clearly wanted to forget. The will wasn't just a document. It wasn't just a list of bequests. It was a sentence, a condemnation. And my prison, my new home, would be that crumbling little shack out back. The life I had helped build, the one that stood so grand and imposing just beyond the garden, would continue without me. On the other side of that garden, the new chapter would begin for them, a new life without me. But what they didn't imagine, what Charlotte couldn't possibly have known, was that in that forgotten shack, my husband had hidden something else. The true key to my future. My name is Eleanor. I am 72 years old now. And the truth is, most of my life was spent living for other people. Before Arthur, my husband, asked me to quit, I was a primary school teacher. I loved it. The children, the bright classrooms, the feeling of making a difference. I taught for almost a decade, pouring my energy into those little minds, watching them grow. But back then, things were different. The world had different expectations. When Arthur said he needed me at home to take care of the house and our daughter Charlotte, I didn't complain. Not really. It was what was expected, wasn't it? Of a good wife, a good mother, a woman's place. So I quietly put away my lesson plans, said goodbye to my little students, and embraced my new role wholeheartedly. Our life wasn't always grand. Oh no, not at all. When we first got married, we lived in that tiny, simple shack, the very one out back that Charlotte now so cruelly calls a chicken coop. It was the only place we had, a small corner on this sprawling piece of property that Arthur had inherited from his parents. It was humble, just a single room with creaky floors and a leaky roof. But it was ours, and it was where we started everything. It was there, huddled together on cold nights, that we dreamed. We imagined the grand mansion we would build right in front of it. A magnificent house, brick by painstaking brick. Arthur would work tirelessly, his hands rough and strong, and I would be his silent support, the quiet strength keeping everything going behind the scenes. We were a team, or so I believed, and we did it. He worked, oh how he worked. I watched him build his empire, and I supported him in every way I knew how, with unwavering devotion. The mansion was completed slowly, over many arduous years, a beautiful testament to his ambition and our shared effort. Life greatly improved. Arthur prospered, his business growing, and I dedicated myself entirely to being what I thought was the perfect hostess, the social glue of our success. I was the present mother, always there for Charlotte, for every scraped knee, every school play. I was the wife who kept the home impeccable, running smoothly, anticipating every need, so he could shine, so he could focus on his work without a single worry. He was always a good man, Arthur, kind in his own quiet way, but very reserved. He kept a lot to himself, hidden behind a gentle smile. Sometimes, in the evenings, after Charlotte was asleep and the house settled into quiet, he'd go to the old shack. I'd find him there, just standing, looking at the modest structure, deep in thought, almost lost in another time. "Never get rid of this little corner, Eleanor," he'd tell me, his voice softer then, almost wistful, like a secret whisper. "The strongest roots grow in the simplest soil. One day, you'll understand the value this place holds." I just thought it was nostalgia, a sweet sentiment from a man remembering where he came from, a simple memory of our humble beginnings. I never thought to question it, never probe deeper. Why would I? It seemed so innocent, so Arthur. My relationship with Charlotte, our daughter, was always my greatest pride, the jewel in my crown. From the moment she was born, she was everything to me, my entire world. I poured my heart into her upbringing, into every detail. I made sure she had the best education, the prettiest clothes, every single opportunity I never had myself. I gave up so much for her. Trips I wanted to take, courses I dreamed of studying, my own little desires, my personal dreams. I set them all aside, willingly, lovingly, so she would lack nothing. I genuinely believed, with all my heart, I was building something unbreakable with her. A bond of deep love, of gratitude, a secure future for my old age, a warm hand to hold. I saw her as my masterpiece, the continuation of everything I represented, everything I worked for, everything I gave. I loved her so fiercely. I believed in our family, in what we had built together, in what we were together, unshakable. But I was about to discover that the shiny veneer of a happy, perfect family, the one I had polished and protected with every fiber of my being for so long, can hide the deepest, most devastating cracks. And I was about to find that out in the worst, most painful way imaginable, a way that would shatter everything I thought I knew. And that shattering began, slowly, insidiously, with Arthur's illness. It wasn't a sudden thing, but a long, drawn-out battle. Those last few years were incredibly difficult, not just for him, but for me too. I watched my strong, reserved Arthur waste away, day by day. Every cough, every struggle to breathe, every moment of pain chipped away at my heart. I was his primary caregiver, his nurse, his constant companion. My days blurred into a cycle of medicine, comfort, and quiet worry. But during that time, something else started to change, something subtle but chilling. I began to feel a strange, cold distance from Charlotte, our daughter, a chill that I couldn't quite explain at first. She would visit her father, of course, but her eyes were always distant, not sad, not truly, more like she was looking through him or past him, always calculating something just beyond my sight. It was unsettling. I'd often overhear her conversations with her husband, Richard. Richard, a man I'd always tried to like, but who now seemed to have a constant, calculating glint in his eye. Their voices would drop to whispers, hushed tones that carried just enough for me to catch fragments, organizing the finances, protecting the estate, the future. It was never about Arthur's comfort, never about his well-being, never about how I, his wife, was coping with the immense strain. It was as if they were already mourning the money, not the person, not my husband, not her father. My heart ached with a pain I couldn't articulate. I tried to talk to her, my own daughter. "Charlotte, is something bothering you? Is there anything you need to tell me?" I'd ask, trying to bridge that growing chasm between us. But she always evaded, her answers like smoke. "Oh, Mom," she'd say, waving a dismissive hand, "you don't understand these things. Let Richard and me handle everything. It's all very complicated." Suddenly, I, Eleanor, the woman who had managed our entire household, kept track of every daily account, balanced every book for decades, was transformed. In her eyes, I was an incapable old woman, useless. My mind, my judgment, my understanding of our family's life, all of it was dismissed. Old promises, the ones we'd made with Arthur about a family trip once he recovered, were quietly forgotten. Any suggestion I made about Arthur's care, about a new doctor, a different therapy, a softer pillow, was met with impatience. A sigh, a roll of her eyes, a sharp, "We've already discussed this, Mom." It made me feel like I was intruding, like I was a bother. The pain of watching my husband waste away was immense, a heavy, constant ache, but it mingled horribly with the anguish of feeling like a stranger in my own home. My own home. I was the caregiver, the nurse, the constant companion by Arthur's bedside, day and night. But when it came to any important decision, any real conversation, I was invisible, a ghost. Charlotte was already acting like the owner of everything, the new matriarch, even while Arthur was still fighting for his life in the next room. And I felt like an old employee, a tired servant who would soon be dismissed. The ingratitude, it hurt. It hurt in silence, a deep, festering wound that I couldn't share with anyone. I kept asking myself, over and over, where had I gone wrong? What had I done to deserve this coldness, this complete disregard? Had I raised her so poorly? Had I loved her too much? I had no answers, just a growing sense of dread. Little did I know, this coldness, this distance, it was just a rehearsal, a practice run for the real betrayal that was coming for me, an act that would wound me deeper than anything I could have imagined. Little did I know that this coldness, this creeping distance, was just the rehearsal, a practice run for the real betrayal, the one that was coming for me, an act that would wound me deeper than anything I could have imagined. The day of the will reading wasn't just a formality. It was the stage for my final, complete humiliation. After Charlotte's cruel remark, the one about the chicken coop, after she declared that my place was out there now, a heavy silence fell again. But this time it was different. It wasn't just my shock, but the silence of everyone else in that room. Not a single person said a word to defend me. Not one. My nephews, Thomas and Sarah, both of whom I'd held as babies, lowered their eyes, embarrassed, unwilling to meet my gaze. My nephew's wife, a woman I'd always tried to be kind to, cast me a quick look of what I can only describe as false pity. A quick, fleeting glance that said, "Poor you, but not my problem." It was clear then. I was a problem, an inconvenience, a burden no one wanted to inherit. The eviction notice wasn't a formal paper. It was given right there, in front of everyone, by my own daughter. Charlotte reveled in her new power, her eyes bright with a truly shocking cruelty, I never imagined she possessed. She held the upper hand, and she wanted everyone to know it. And I was just there, exposed, discarded. The following week was a blur of silent, agonizing pain. My body moved, but my mind felt numb, disconnected. I went through the motions of boxing up my life. My clothes, carefully folded, each garment a memory. My books, their pages worn from years of reading, now feeling heavy in my hands. The few photos I had left, some faded, some creased, capturing moments of a life that felt impossibly far away now. Charlotte would pass by the open door of what had been my bedroom for 30 years, now empty except for my stacked boxes. She'd walk past me as if I were a ghost, an invisible, inconvenient presence haunting her new domain. She was already measuring the walls for new curtains, holding swatches of fabric against the wallpaper I had chosen so lovingly. She talked on the phone about renovating our bedroom, the one Arthur and I had shared, without a single thought or glance in my direction. Every object I picked up, every memory I touched, seemed to accuse me of being naive, of believing in a love that in the end had a price I apparently couldn't pay. On the last day, the final day, with my few boxes stacked neatly by the back door, ready for the short, humiliating journey to the shack, she made her final demand. She stood in the doorway, blocking my path, not even looking at my face. Her gaze was fixed somewhere beyond me, on the hallway, on her future. "Oh," she said, almost as an afterthought, a flicker of something cold in her eyes, "leave the jewelry Dad gave you. They're part of the house's estate now, belong with the house." My heart, already bruised and battered, seemed to crack a little further. I didn't argue. I didn't even speak. I just reached up, unclasped the pearl necklace I was wearing, the one Arthur had given me on our 25th wedding anniversary, and placed it in her outstretched, expectant hand. The pearls felt warm for a moment against my skin, then cold as they left my grasp. In that moment, I felt nothing but an immense, profound emptiness. The daughter I raised, the one I poured my entire being into, was not just casting me out, but was stealing my memories, one by one. And I let her. I simply let her. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just walked out the back door, carrying my small bag, leaving behind everything that had been my home, my life. I went to the cabin, the shack, without a single backward glance at the grand mansion. But as I closed the mansion door for the last time, not as the lady of the house, but as a silent, dismissed shadow, a strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't an end. It couldn't be. It felt like the beginning of something I didn't even understand myself, but a beginning nonetheless. And it was all happening on the other side of that garden door. As I closed the mansion door for the last time, not as the lady of the house, but as a silent, dismissed shadow, a strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't an end. It couldn't be. It felt like the beginning of something I didn't even understand myself, but a beginning nonetheless. And it was all happening on the other side of that garden door. I walked that short path, my small bag clutched in my hand, and entered the cabin. The moment the door creaked shut behind me, the smell hit me, the heavy, forgotten scent of dust, of old wood, of years of disuse. It embraced me, almost suffocating me. It was a small place, just one cramped room, really, and a tiny separate bathroom. From the small, grimy window, I could see it. The imposing mansion, already lit up, glowing against the twilight, full of life. My old life, now separated by mere yards, but an ocean of betrayal. The urge to cry, to truly sob, was immense. To scream until my throat was raw, to surrender completely to the despair that clawed at my chest, to just fall down right there on the dusty floor and give up. But a strange, stubborn strength, one I didn't even know I possessed, held me back. It wasn't anger yet, not full-blown rage, but something colder, quieter. It was the memory of Arthur's voice, clear as day in my mind, echoing his words from so many years ago. The strongest roots grow in the simplest soil. Instead of lamenting, instead of letting the tears come, I started to clean. It was a simple, physical act. I found an old, stiff broom in a corner and began to sweep the floor, sending clouds of dust dancing in the fading light. I attacked the cobwebs that hung like dusty garlands from the ceiling, pulling them down with a broom handle. Then I walked to the windows, forcing them open, pushing against years of stiffness, letting the cool evening air finally rush in, chasing away the stale smell. It was hard work, physical and demanding, and it prevented me from thinking, from dwelling on the stinging pain. Every single movement, every swipe of the broom, every push on the window was an act of stubbornness, a silent, defiant refusal to feel defeated. I wasn't going to give Charlotte the pleasure, the satisfaction of seeing me destroyed. Not yet. Not ever. Silence became my ally in that small, forgotten room. Observation became my quiet weapon. I needed to understand what Arthur had meant by those words. The strongest roots grow in the simplest soil. It couldn't just be a sentimental memory, could it? Not from Arthur. He was a practical man, always had been. He never spoke in vain. His words always had a purpose. That phrase wasn't just poetry. It was a clue. It had to be. As I struggled to drag an old, heavy wooden cupboard from one wall to another, trying to make the tiny space feel a little more open, his words came back to me again, even more clearly this time. One day, you'll understand the value this place holds. It wasn't just nostalgia then. It was more, much more. And suddenly, the crushing pain, the humiliation, the emptiness I had felt, it gave way. It gave way to a spark of curiosity, a cold, quiet determination that settled deep in my bones. I didn't know what I was looking for, not exactly, but I knew, with a certainty that hummed through me, that there was something here, something Arthur had left for me. My revenge, I realized, wouldn't be with shouts or with fights or with tears. It would come with the calm, unwavering certainty of someone who knows a secret that everyone else, especially Charlotte, completely ignores. I just had to find it, and I would, My revenge, I realized, wouldn't be with shouts or with fights or with tears. It would come with the calm, unwavering certainty of someone who knows a secret that everyone else, especially Charlotte, completely ignores. I just had to find it, and I would. The first few days in that cabin were a profound isolation. It was as if the world outside had forgotten I existed. I had no phone, no television. My only company was the creaking sounds of the old wood at night, the rustle of leaves outside, and my own thoughts. And then there was the sight of the mansion, my old home. On the first weekend after I moved into the shack, Charlotte threw a party, a big one. The loud music carried across the garden, vibrating through the thin walls of my small cabin. Laughter, shrill and carefree, drifted in through the open window, cutting into the quiet of my solitude like sharp knives. I heard voices I recognized, relatives and friends, people I'd hosted countless times in that very mansion. But none of them came to my door, not a single call, not one visit. I was officially exiled, banished. The crazy old woman, living forgotten in the back, a shameful secret they all agreed to ignore. The financial situation began to tighten quickly. My small teacher's pension, the one I'd barely thought about for years while Arthur managed everything, now felt terribly inadequate. It barely covered my essential medication, the pills for my heart, the ones for my joints, and food. Simple, basic food. I watched my meager savings dwindle day by day, faster than I could have imagined. Winter was creeping in, and the cabin was cold, damp. I needed heating gas. The thought of facing another night shivering was unbearable. One morning, after a particularly cold night, I gathered every ounce of courage I had left. My pride screamed at me, but my body ached from the cold. I had no other choice. I walked towards the mansion, not through the front door, the one I had graced for decades, but around the back to the kitchen door, the back entrance, where deliveries came, where staff used to enter. I knocked, a soft, hesitant rap. Charlotte appeared at the door. Her hair was perfectly styled, a silk dressing gown draped around her, and in her hand a glass of wine, even though it was still morning. She looked at me, not at my eyes, but she looked me up and down. A slow, assessing glance, as if I were a stranger, a beggar from the street. Her lips curved into a slight dismissive smile. "What do you want, Mung?" she asked, her voice flat, devoid of warmth. "Charlotte," I started, my voice barely a whisper, a lump forming in my throat. I need a little money, just enough for some heating gas. It's getting very cold in the cabin." She took a slow sip of her wine. Her eyes, cold and hard, finally met mine. "Learn to fend for yourself, Mum," she said, her voice sharp, unforgiving. "I'm not your source of income anymore." Then, without another word, without a moment of hesitation, she simply closed the door in my face. The click of the latch echoed in the sudden silence. The humiliation, oh, the sheer, crushing humiliation. It was a physical blow, worse than any slap. Being treated like a beggar, an unwanted nuisance by my own daughter. The child I had nurtured, protected, poured my entire being into. It was the lowest point of my life. I stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, then slowly turned. I walked back to my cabin, my steps heavy, my vision blurred. I sat down on the single, worn step outside my cabin door, the cold seeping into my bones. And for the very first time, I truly cried. Not the quiet, dignified tears I'd shed in the mansion. Not the silent grief for Arthur. These were harsh, racking sobs tearing from deep inside me. I cried for my loneliness, for the devastating realization of my own naivety, for the brutal cruelty of a world I no longer recognized, a world that had seemingly thrown me away. I felt like I had hit rock bottom, that there was nowhere else to go. The pain was physical, a sharp, constant ache in my chest that wouldn't go away, a memory of my determination. It's at rock bottom that sometimes we find the strength to look up, to finally start to climb. It's at rock bottom that sometimes we find the strength to look up, to finally start to climb. That night, after Charlotte slammed the door in my face, after the tears had finally dried, a cold, hard determination settled over me. It was a desperate feeling, yes, but also a sharp, clear resolve. I couldn't stay like this. I wouldn't. Arthur's words echoed again, louder this time. One day you'll understand the value this place holds. It wasn't just about simple roots. It was about value. I had to find it. I searched the cabin again, methodically, not just cleaning this time, but truly looking. Every creak in the floorboards, every loose knot in the wood, I examined it. I ran my hands over the walls, pushed at the old, dusty furniture. I remembered the old bed, the one that had always been tucked into the corner, the one that looked like it had been there for 100 years. I'd noticed a board beneath it once, a bit loose, but I'd never thought anything of it. Now, driven by a mixture of desperation and this growing, insistent certainty, I crawled onto the floor. The dust was thick, clinging to everything. With the help of the kitchen knife I'd used to cut cheese for dinner just hours before, I began to pry at the loose board. It groaned, resisting at first. Then slowly, reluctantly, it lifted. Beneath it, just as Arthur had planned, was a small false bottom. It was cleverly done, almost impossible to spot, unless you knew exactly where to look. My heart began to race then, a frantic bird fluttering against my ribs. My hands trembled as I reached inside. My fingers closed around something cool and firm. I pulled it out. It was an old leather folder, worn smooth with age, but sturdy. This was it. This had to be it. I opened the folder slowly, my breath catching in my throat. Inside, there were 2 crisp, official-looking documents, slightly yellowed at the edges, and tucked between them, a letter, handwritten in Arthur's familiar, elegant script. I picked up the first document, my eyes scanning the words. It was the original deed. The deed to the entire property. The immense plot of land where both this tiny cabin and the grand mansion, my former home, stood. And it was in my name, Eleanor Davies, registered over 40 years ago, a wedding gift he had never told me about. My breath hitched. 40 years. all this time, I had been the owner. The second document was a life estate contract. This one was for Arthur himself, granting him the right to live on and manage the property. But it clearly stated that the contract ended with his death. His death. My heart ached, a sharp pang remembering him. But then a different feeling started to rise, a slow, burning warmth. Finally, I unfolded the letter, my fingers tracing Arthur's handwriting. His voice, clear as if he were speaking to me from across the room, filled my mind as I read his words. "My dearest Eleanor," it began, "I know this will be a shock. I have watched Charlotte grow, and I have seen the shadows of greed in her eyes, especially in these last few years. I set up my will as a test, a final challenge. If she honors you, cares for you, truly loves you as a daughter should, one day she will know the truth from you. If not, if her greed blinds her, you will have the power, my love, to protect yourself." I clutched the letter, my eyes blurring. He knew. He had seen it all. He had planned. "The land is yours, Eleanor," I read, the words a powerful balm to my aching soul. "It always was. My love, use this power wisely, with the dignity I know you possess. Do not let them dim your light." The next day, my resolve was unbreakable. I walked to the nearest public phone, my head held high, and called the same lawyer, Mr. Davies. My voice was calm, clear, completely unlike the heartbroken woman he had seen just days before. I requested a document review, a formal meeting. He sounded surprised, but I insisted. Charlotte was summoned. She arrived at Mr. Davies' office, her face a mask of slight annoyance, probably thinking I was there to beg again, or perhaps just to be a nuisance. Richard, her husband, was with her, a smug look on his face. Mr. Davies, however, looked pale, his usual confidence replaced by a nervous tremor in his hands. He cleared his throat. "Mrs. Eleanor Davies," he began, looking at me, "has presented documents that profoundly alter the estate's standing." He then explained, slowly, carefully, that the £7 million mansion, the very jewel of Arthur's estate, had been built on land that belonged, legally and uniquely, to me, to Eleanor Davies. My name, loud and clear, echoing in the room. Charlotte's face, usually so composed, went utterly blank. Her jaw dropped, and her eyes, normally so sharp and assessing, widened in disbelief, then in a dawning horror. Her world, the one she had so triumphantly claimed, collapsed in that instant. Her silence, her shocked, utter silence, was my answer. There were no shouts from me, no vengeful words, no dramatic accusations, only the silent, profound justice of a man who, even after death, had protected the woman he loved, the woman who had stood by him for 50 years. The shock on my daughter's face brought me no joy, no triumph, only a deep, aching relief, a wave of calm washing over me. The tables had turned, and in that quiet office, I finally felt free, and ready for whatever came next. The shock on my daughter's face brought me no joy, no triumph, only a deep, aching relief, a wave of calm washing over me. The tables had turned, and in that quiet office, I finally felt free, and ready for whatever came next. I didn't evict Charlotte. Not really. That would have been too easy, too much like her, too much like seeking a petty revenge. My purpose wasn't to punish her, but to claim what was mine and to regain my dignity. I wanted to build something new, not simply destroy her world. So, with the calm certainty of someone who finally had control, I established my conditions. "You can continue to live in the mansion, Charlotte," I told her, my voice steady. "But from now on, you will pay me rent. And, more importantly, from today, you will learn to treat me with the respect I deserve, as the owner of this land and as your mother." She had no other option, no legal leg to stand on. Her eyes still held that glint of disbelief, but she agreed. The silence in the room after she spoke was profound, but this time it was my silence. With the legalities settled, I focused on securing my future. I decided to sell a portion of the back of the property, a section I didn't need, to a construction company. It was a purely practical decision, one that guaranteed me a financial independence I had never truly known in my life. All those years, I had relied on Arthur, on Charlotte, on promises. Now, I was truly and completely self-sufficient. It was an astonishing feeling, a freedom I hadn't realized I craved until I held it in my hands. But with that money, I didn't move back into the mansion. Not a chance. That grand house, for all its beauty, held too many memories, too many expectations, too many quiet humiliations, too many moments of feeling unseen. Not all of those memories were good, and frankly, I felt no desire to live under the same roof as Charlotte. No, my home was now the cabin, the shack, as she had so cruelly called it. I invested in it, transforming it. It became a charming small house, truly my own. I had new, proper windows installed, new floors laid, a cozy fireplace put in. I designed a small, vibrant floral garden just for me, filled with bright colors and sweet smells, a little oasis right outside my door. It was simple, yes, but it was mine, and it was filled with light and new life. My days now flow at a different rhythm, a peaceful, unhurried pace. I hired a kind young woman, a local girl named Sarah, to help with the cleaning a couple of times a week, a luxury I now permitted myself. Most of my time, though, is spent doing the things I truly loved, the things I had set aside for so long. I read, losing myself in stories, exploring worlds I'd never visited. I care for my plants, watching them grow, tending to them with a gentle hand. And I receive the few true friends I had left, those who never truly abandoned me, sharing cups of tea and quiet conversations in my cozy new living room. My life has become simple, yes, but it is deeply, profoundly mine. There are still nights, of course, when the pain of betrayal stings, when the ghosts of old memories, the harsh words, the cold dismissal, creep into the quiet of my new home. But upon waking, as the morning light fills my little house, I look around at my own space, my own garden, and I know that I am exactly where I should be. But upon waking, as the morning light fills my little house, I look around at my own space, my own garden, and I know that I am exactly where I should be. This quiet corner, this small home, it represents something so much bigger than just four walls and a roof. It represents my journey, my battles, and the profound, hard-won lessons I carry now. I look at my story, all of it, from those first hopeful dreams in this very shack, to the grandeur of the mansion, and then back again, humbled but not broken. I see the deep, indelible marks it left on me, the scars of betrayal, the ache of loneliness, the sting of being dismissed. But alongside those marks, I also see something else, something truly surprising. The strength I didn't know I had. It was always there, I suppose, buried deep beneath years of putting others first, of quiet service, of believing my worth was tied to how well I cared for my family. It took me 72 years, a lifetime really, to finally find myself, to discover that my true worth wasn't in what I did for others, not in the endless tasks, the perfect hostess, the silent support. It wasn't in the titles wife or mother, though I cherished those roles deeply. No, my worth was, and always had been, in simply who I am. Eleanor, a woman capable of enduring, of rebuilding, of standing tall even when knocked down. It's a lesson learned late, but powerfully. And you out there listening to my story, I wonder if any of this resonates with you. Have you ever felt like a burden in the lives of those you helped raise the most? Have you ever felt that your voice wasn't heard, truly heard, and that your presence was merely tolerated? A quiet shadow in a busy house. I think about the way I was treated, the way Charlotte and even others around me saw me. Just an old woman, past my prime, no longer useful, easily dismissed. It makes me reflect on how easily we, as a society, sometimes discard the elderly. As if years of experience, of love, of life, suddenly lose their value simply because the hair turns gray or the steps slow. But every human being, every single one, young or old, deserves respect, deserves dignity, deserves to be seen, truly seen, for the person they are, for the wisdom they carry, for the life they have lived. It's not just about money or power or what someone can do for you. It's about recognizing the inherent value of a soul. My journey through this pain, this injustice, has led me to a new beginning, yes, but it's also given me a new pair of eyes. I see the quiet dignity in struggle now, the silent strength in perseverance. I understand that the greatest battles are often fought within, and that true victory isn't about crushing an opponent, but about finding your own unshakable ground. I am still here, still learning, still growing, and that in itself is a testament. The future still stretches before me, unknown, but I face it with a peace I wouldn't trade for any mansion. A peace built on self-respect, on hard-won freedom, and on the quiet knowledge that I am finally, truly my own. I think about the way I was treated, the way Charlotte and even others around me saw me. Just an old woman, past my prime, no longer useful, easily dismissed. It makes me reflect on how easily we, As a society, sometimes discard the elderly, as if years of experience, of love, of life, suddenly lose their value simply because the hair turns gray or the steps slow. But every human being, every single one, young or old, deserves respect, deserves dignity, deserves to be seen, truly seen, for the person they are, for the wisdom they carry, for the life they have lived. It's not just about money or power or what someone can do for you. It's about recognizing the inherent value of a soul, a person's story. My journey through this pain, this injustice, has led me to a new beginning, yes, but it's also given me a new pair of eyes, a different kind of sight. I see the quiet dignity in struggle now, the silent strength in perseverance. I understand that the greatest battles are often fought within, and that true victory isn't about crushing an opponent, but about finding your own unshakable ground. I am still here, still learning, still growing, and that in itself is a testament to something deep inside all of us. When you go through something so profoundly personal, something that makes you question everything you thought was real, you learn to cherish what truly matters. You learn to hold on to those genuine connections, the ones that are honest and real, and you become aware of how easily those connections can sometimes slip away, how little things can interrupt them, even without meaning to. It makes you want to make sure the things you value, the stories you connect with, stay with you. So if you want to keep receiving real stories like this, pay attention. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm you are still subscribed to the channel and activate the bell. It's a small thing, but it helps us stay connected, doesn't it? Like finding a kindred spirit in the quiet of the morning. The future still stretches before me, unknown, but I face it with a peace I wouldn't trade for any mansion, any amount of money. A peace built on self-respect, on hard-won freedom, and on the quiet knowledge that I am finally, truly my own. And that I've found is the greatest treasure of all.